All right, welcome everyone to This Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we're about to take a hard, unfiltered look at the current artificial intelligence boom. Now, if you've been casually following the headlines, you'd probably think AI is just this magical software, right? Like some sleek chatbot living up in the cloud, ready to revolutionize the world at absolutely zero cost. But the reality? It is completely different. Today, we're going to reframe this entire boom. We're not looking at it as a software miracle, but as a massive, hidden industrial iceberg. And we're about to descend into the freezing depths to see exactly what's lurking below the waterline.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for the descent. 1. The trillion-dollar delusion. 2. Packaging the AI hype. 3. The hidden AI factory. 4. The human support system. 5. The security self-sabotage. And finally, 6. Surviving the market crash.
Let's start right at the surface level. Section 1. The trillion-dollar delusion, or as I like to call it, the financial sinkhole.
Just look at this staggering number, $600 billion. In 2024, the analysts over at Sequoia Capital actually ran the math on what AI companies are currently spending. They asked a pretty simple question. How much revenue would this industry need to pull in annually just to break even? And the answer is $600 billion every single year. To put that into perspective, that is nowhere close to what these companies are actually earning today. Startups and tech giants alike are literally burning through billions a month just to keep the lights on, totally relying on endless funding rounds to survive. It's a financial gap so massive, it's honestly kind of hard to wrap your head around.
And this brilliantly illustrates the paradox we're in right now. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, recently told investors his company is going to drop $190 billion on capital expenditures in a single year, yet they still expect to be capacity constrained. I mean, think about that for a second. The most valuable software company on the planet has $190 billion to spend, and they physically cannot acquire enough capacity to meet their own demand. How is that even possible if AI is just code?
Well, to understand why, we have to fundamentally shift our mindset. Just notice the stark difference in scaling costs between traditional software and Gen AI. With traditional software, once you build a program, adding a new user costs practically nothing. That near zero marginal cost is exactly why companies like Microsoft and Adobe got so insanely profitable. But generative AI? It's the exact opposite. Every single time you ask a chatbot a question, it costs real physical money. You're firing up heavy infrastructure to serve what's known as physical tokens. So unlike traditional tech, scaling AI actually makes it vastly more expensive to run. You aren't scaling software here, you're scaling heavy industry.
Which naturally brings us to Section 2, packaging the AI hype. If the unit economics are this terrible, how on earth are executives convincing the world to hand over trillions of dollars?
Believe it or not, they do it by essentially using the exact same psychology found in YouTube thumbnails. If you look at YouTube's playbook for capturing an audience, they tell you to use either searchable titles, practical things that solve specific problems, or intriguing titles, which use dramatic, wild hooks to spark blind curiosity. AI startups have entirely abandoned the practical, searchable reality. Instead, they lean hard into the intriguing, God mode buzzwords. They're not selling you a tool to speed up your spreadsheets, they're selling an autonomous AI-first singularity. And well, this intoxicating language works perfectly to bypass logic and secure massive amounts of venture capital.
It works so well, in fact, that heading into 2025, a whopping 61% of all global venture capital flowed directly into AI-related businesses. But there's a really dangerous psychological trap happening here. Experts call it cyberpsychosis, or the sycophancy trap. Corporate CEOs are basically locking themselves in an echo chamber with their own chatbots. They ask the AI for advice, the AI gives them confident, agreeable feedback, and the CEO gets this dopamine hit that validates their decision to just keep spending billions. It's a closed loop of absolute delusion, and it's propping up the global economy.
All right, let's sink completely below the waterline now and examine Section 3, the hidden AI factory, and the physical bottleneck.
I actually want you to just banish the word cloud from your vocabulary for a moment, because what we're really dealing with is the AI factory. When you type a prompt, you're not pinging some magical ether. You are placing an order on a physical assembly line. The true bottleneck right now isn't just getting NVIDIA GPUs. Actually, scratch that. The real constraint is the extremely complex industrial process of taking those chips, tying them to high-bandwidth memory, and physically packaging them together using optical compute networks so the data can move without melting the copper. The true constraint here is the factory floor.
Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is the power usage inside these massive factories.
only 40% of the incredible amount of electricity pulled into an AI data center is actually used for computing, the part where the AI is thinking. Another 40% is completely dedicated to cooling systems. Think about that. Nearly half the power poured into an AI factory isn't making it any smarter, it's literally just preventing the servers from melting themselves into slag. And that cooling has a massive, tangible, real-world impact. To keep those servers from catching fire, a single mid-sized data center evaporates 100 million gallons of water annually. And that's not ocean water, that's drawn directly from local municipal water supplies, the exact same rivers and reservoirs that serve the surrounding communities. The digital AI boom is evaporating very real, very finite physical resources at a scale that's pushing local power grids and water systems to the absolute brink.
We're descending even deeper now to Layer 4. Section 4, the human support system. This is where the illusion of full automation truly shatters.
The marketing language of AI always suggests pristine autonomy, right? Machines thinking entirely for themselves. But quietly holding this whole ecosystem together is a deeply exploited human labor force. Over in places like Kenya, the Philippines, and India, thousands of workers spend their days correcting the chaotic, inappropriate, and sometimes dangerous mistakes that these models constantly make. They're paid poverty wages, often navigating genuine psychological trauma just to manually filter out explicit content. It doesn't look like a futuristic utopia at all. It looks like a 19th century sweatshop hiding right behind a clean white chat box.
So, what actually happens when a company tries to rely solely on this imperfect technology? Let's trace this disastrous timeline from the financial firm Klarna. Back in early 2024, their CEO confidently predicted AI would replace human jobs. By mid-2024, they'd slashed their workforce by 40% and rolled out an AI chatbot to handle customer service. But by late 2024, that chatbot fundamentally failed at resolving complex issues. Customers were furious. And by early 2025, the company had to do this humiliating U-turn, literally forcing their highly paid software engineers and marketers to answer customer service phone calls because they had fired all the humans who actually knew how to fix things. It is the efficiency lie, perfectly captured in action.
Down to Layer 5. Section 5, the security self-sabotage, focusing on corporate data leaks. Get this, right now, almost 35% of all employee inputs into AI chatbots contain highly sensitive information. It's wild. Sensitive data is just pouring into these tools. Legal documents, patient medical records, confidential contracts. Employees are constantly told to work faster, so when they're forced to choose between a strict corporate security policy and a tight deadline, they pick the deadline every single time. Samsung learned this the hard way when their employees willingly uploaded highly secret proprietary semiconductor source code directly into a public chatbot just to debug an issue. And remember, you cannot untrain an AI. Once that trade secret is ingested, it's like trying to unmix paint. Security researchers are literally calling this the largest uncontrolled corporate data leak in human history. Which finally brings us to the very bottom of the iceberg. Section 6, surviving the market crash and the coming correction.
History really has a funny way of repeating itself. Right now, the demand for advanced TSMC AI chips is running at 3 times the global supply. Companies are just hoarding infrastructure based on this wild assumption that demand and profits are magically going to catch up. We saw this exact same behavior back in the late 1990s. As this quote points out, the internet boom wasn't fake, but the timeline for dramatic overvaluation absolutely was. That delusion resulted in a 76% crash of the NASDAQ. Today, we're staring at a $1 trillion hole in the economy where AI investment simply isn't matching GDP growth. A massive correction is looming, for sure.
So the crucial point is, how do you and your business actually survive when this bubble deflates? If you are investing in AI tools right now, you absolutely must follow these 3 actionable rules. First, demand capacity guarantees in your vendor contracts. Remember, you aren't buying software, you're buying factory time. Make sure you are guaranteed server allocation. Second, build routing layers. Stop sending simple text requests to incredibly expensive power-hungry models, route them to cheaper, more efficient ones instead. And third, identify the hidden human supervision. Before you buy any AI product, demand to know exactly where humans are secretly patching the product's flaws during the demo. Because when you deploy it at scale, you are going to be the one paying for those flaws.
Which leaves us with this final, essential question for you to chew on. When the $1 trillion hype machine finally runs out of cheap power, municipal water, and endless venture capital money, will your company be the one left holding the bag? It is absolutely vital to reevaluate your tech dependencies right now, before this iceberg flips entirely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, always keep questioning the hype, and I will see you next time.